Florida's Fourth Estate with hosts Ginger Gadsden and Matt Austin. The show where we bring Florida into focus. Sponsored by Light Orlando, delivering hope together.
Hey, welcome back to another edition of Florida's Fourth Estate. Very special episode today. You may have seen the movie Cocaine Bear. Well, we have the perfect sequel opportunity for you. It's Cocaine Sharks. It's a little weirder and sadder than the movie, I think, but it's going to be very interesting as we talk to a pro about this today. I'm Matt Austin.
And I'm Ginger Gadsden. Is it really a sequel if it's a different animal and it's in the ocean? The bear was on land.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just saying, but do we want to then just venture into meth gator? Because that's a thing too. But
we could do cocaine gator. It's got to stick with one thing, has to be consistent.
The theme has to be cocaine. Okay,
Yes.
Got it. So we have the perfect person to talk about this because when you see headlines like that, it sounds made up. Like, are sharks hopped up on cocaine in the ocean? It turns out the answer is yes. And the perfect person to discuss this is Dr. Tracy Fanara. She is an oceanographer. Thank you so much for joining us to talk about something that could sound really crazy, but you're going to make it make sense for all of us today. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it does. It sounds nuts, right?
Sounds so crazy. Yes.
How do you even start to investigate something like that? Can you just kind of take us back and give us the genesis of how you guys realized that there are sharks in the ocean that are actually eating cocaine?
Well, you hear cocaine bear and you think, what the heck? How does a bear even intersect with cocaine? And the truth is, it really did happen. And statistically, it's much less likely than a shark interacting with cocaine. And there was, especially this year, there's just been so many cocaine bows, and last year, so many cocaine bows washing ashore in the Florida Keys. And if you look at ocean currents, there are 3 places in Florida that these bows are most likely to wash up, and they are shark territory. So you figure there's some catchy title, yes, but there's some real legitimacy to this study. And so the first thing that we did was a preliminary study. It was for Shark Week, and we looked at the likelihood that sharks would be attracted to these cocaine bows if they are dumped in the ocean. I mean, it was Shark Week, so they really wanted to find crazy sharks, of course, but
you guys fit well into this. This is a perfect Shark Week episode, I think. Sorry, continue.
Oh no, that's it. Like that, you're exactly right. This was a perfect Shark Week episode. But the thing is, to see a shark that's been recently exposed to cocaine was the tough thing when you only have 5 days to do so. So this really was just a preliminary study, throwing cocaine barrels, what looked like cocaine barrels from a plane, and then we had some swans and what looked like cocaine barrels set up to see which ones the sharks preferred, to see if sharks would go for the cocaine barrels because they looked familiar to them, like something that they would choose to interact with, because previous studies did show a study with fish preferring, if they were exposed to cocaine previously, they preferred tanks with cocaine. So we were seeing if that was the case. And also, because we couldn't give sharks cocaine in the open ocean, we were apparently
I feel like there has to be a law against that for sure.
Yeah, we would have had PETA on us real fast.
Yeah.
That would have.
Yeah, I'm no lawyer. That sounds like entrapment.
That sounds like a bad idea. Right, totally. So we gave them a whole bunch of fish food, which would sort of simulate their reaction to cocaine, but that's not really accurate. It's a completely different chemical. So, I mean, do you want to hear what we found?
We're dying to hear what you found, for sure. You're saying you're testing.
There was a shark that was swimming sideways, like it was swimming. Like, is that right? Like they swim differently? Did that happen? It was kind of wobbly in the ocean.
I mean, here's the thing. Some of this stuff is for TV, right? Like, where is it going? I like, who's gonna see this right now?
Give it to us straight.
Okay,
Shoot us straight, girl.
Like from the shark biologists I know, that shark swimming sideways, it could have meant a million different things. And basically, like, my experience with sharks and toxicology has mostly been with the toxin that's released from a Florida red tide balloon. It's a species called Carenia brevis, and the toxin brevetoxin can cause, and other biotoxins can do this too, neurological impacts like fish swimming on their sides or swimming in circles. So that was kind of the point of that, of the narrative of that shot. But if you actually looked at the shark, was it actually swimming weird? That's debatable. I think no, and I think that if it was impacted from something, it wasn't cocaine in that case. In that case. Now, with the recent study that Brazilian scientists have found, 13 out of 13 sharks in the Rio de Janeiro that they tested positive for cocaine. 12 of them tested positive for the metabolite. Now that's a totally different ballgame than what we were working with in the Keys.
Wow. Okay, so as you're looking at this, I know your focus is on the marine creatures, and we're going to get back to that, but do we have any idea how much cocaine is just running through the ocean to get to America? Because if you watch the news, it sounds like it's all coming over the Mexican border, but it sounds like maybe the majority, at least of cocaine, is coming onto our shores via the ocean.
From the water, yeah. I'm not technically a biologist. My expertise is in ecotoxicology and pollutant transport, chemical transport. So I'm actually more inclined to speak about the chemical transport of cocaine over water, and where it ends up, where it comes from, and where it ends up. And that's what I did for studies that I did on my own following Shark Week. And should I talk about that now?
Yeah,
Yeah,
go
can
for
you
it.
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that? Because it is concerning. I know we're kind of making light of it a little bit, but it really has serious ramifications.
Yeah, I mean, and here's the thing, this is just one of the chemicals that are impacting our ecosystems, right? We have sunscreen on our skin that you've heard a lot about, but we also have
Mhm.
all the pharmaceuticals that we ingest, the things that we use in the shower, all of that that goes to our wastewater treatment plants and then enters the ecosystem because it's not removed in the primary and secondary treatment that we have in most wastewater treatment plants in the US. So we have all of these chemicals impacting our ecosystems. But on top of that, we have these recreational drugs. So following the study that, or the preliminary experiments that we did with Shark Week, which did show that some sharks, and it really is on an individual basis. Some sharks are really curious when something is dropped in the water, and they will chomp down. Most likely, tiger sharks are most likely to do this kind of thing, and they might be acutely impacted by the cocaine at that point. But the question is, how many sharks are exposed to cocaine on a regular basis? So what I did was, first of all, the first question that a lot of people ask is, how are these packages even opened? If a shark doesn't bite them right away, how are they even exposed? They're wrapped so tightly with duct tape. So I exposed these bales that we put together with the turbulence that you would find commonly in the Florida Keys, like 3-foot waves, and used a washing machine for this, an accelerometer, just to make sure that the turbulence was pretty consistent with what these bales would experience in the natural environment, and it was. And then on top of that, so first of all, those packages did open when exposed to that wave turbulence. But in talking to a sheriff down in Key West, these bales come to shore completely open, half open, cocaine
Wow.
exposed to the natural environment. It's really soluble. So of course these sharks could be ingesting, or I shouldn't say ingesting. It's more likely that they're getting exposure to cocaine through their gills, I would say.
Okay, so that makes sense. So the majority of, yeah, I wouldn't think that there would be, even if a few sharks are biting into these bales, that doesn't seem like it would be a huge population. But if tons of cocaine is just being dropped into the ocean, that cocaine then mixes with the water. And then you're saying the sharks and probably every other fish in there is then breathing it in through its gills. And what result is that? Does it kill the sharks? Does it make them drunk? What happens? Or high, I guess would be the proper term.
Yeah, that is a really good question. So first of all, in the open ocean, I'm not too worried about exposure to large amounts of cocaine just because it is really soluble. It's a huge body of water. It's going to dissolve really quickly. My concern is more with the bales that wash ashore, get caught in the mangroves with wave interaction. More cocaine is just, time released basically, and some shark species live their entire lives in the mangroves, which is the one of those species is what the Brazilian scientists did their study on. So that's more where I'm worried. And do they go crazy? So we don't have any anecdotal evidence or reports on sharks that we know to have been recently exposed to cocaine and their reactions. By the time the Brazilian scientists got those sharks, they were already dead. So that's still a big mystery.
Okay, so it makes sense that they would absorb it through their gills, and I read they also can absorb it through their eyes. Is it crazy for
Yeah.
me to make the jump? Like, say, for example, we're talking about sharks now, but we eat fish. So if the fish are exposed to this kind of cocaine and they happen to live, because they could build up a resistance or a tolerance to something, is it possible that one day we could be eating fish that have ingested or been exposed to cocaine, and then therefore we are exposed to cocaine? Or is
Well,
that too
yeah, I
big a
mean,
jump?
no, it's not too big a jump because it happens with a whole bunch of other chemicals.
Mhm.
Bioaccumulation is a real thing. But when it comes to cocaine, you'd more likely the cocaine turns into the metabolite through biologic processes, so that's more likely what you would be exposed to. By the time that we're exposed to it, the concentration that we'd be exposed to is questionable, but I don't think that we're going to be jumping off walls from eating a fish. However, with if we're eating enough of the fish with all of these chemicals, what are those compounding and long-term impacts? And that's something that's really gray area. And that's, I mean, it's going to be dependent on the person and the chemistry, and to make that connection is going to be really difficult. It's kind of like making the connection between cancer and a hazardous waste dump site. I don't know if you have any experience with that, but I'm from Buffalo, New York, the home of Love Canal,
Mm,
and making
yeah,
that connection is really, really difficult.
Because each person
sure.
has a different reaction to it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes.
You mentioned something earlier that I wanted to get back to. You said we're ingesting all of these things that go to the wastewater treatment plants. I guess I assumed when it went to the wastewater treatment plant that those things were then eradicated out of the water. But when the wastewater treatment plants, they do some sort of process to it, and then you're saying a lot of these things we ingest, like these prescription drugs and these antidepressants and stuff, are they still existing?
Oh yeah. Like it's interesting. We only remove what's regulated to remove, and we only test for what's regulated to remove. So so as we're making more and more chemicals, and as things are identified to be problems, I mean that can take, a decade or two to get into but really the bottom line is that our wastewater treatment plants separated from our water treatment plants, the wastewater treatment plants don't go through that last stage of water treatment where it's being treated for our consumption, but still there are still things that aren't completely removed. But with wastewater treatment plants, it's only primary and secondary treatment. That's why you see a lot of the time, when you have a wastewater outfall, it's very, you'll hear people complain that it's causing algae blooms or initiating cyanobacteria blooms because the nutrients is still high. There are only certain things that are removed from the wastewater treatment plant. It depends on what plant you're at, and where what the water quality is going to be like. But we're seeing studies all over the world, and of course in the US, where we are finding pharmaceutical concentrations of pharmaceuticals, antidepressants, all of these chemicals in our water bodies. And the question is, what kind of impact are they going to have on the ecosystem? And you might not see it as an acute impact, but for a life cycle. For example, the exposure to cocaine, the exposure of eels to cocaine slowed their processes down to where they miss migration periods. I mean, that kind of impact, like slowing reproduction, slowing the amount of the amount of I don't know I'm not a biologist, babies that they have, like really impacting that cycle that you don't see first generation, you might see down the road. And what do all those compounding impacts have on humans is really like plaguing ecologists and public health scientists.
Yeah, that
Wow.
is,
I
that's
thought
all.
we were
I
going to
just
talk
want
about
fluoride in
cocaine
my
sharks
water.
today, Ginger,
I
and
know.
this is getting so much more interesting than even
No, but
that.
you know what? But that's the thing. You got to get that headline to get people into the weeds, and
That's
then
true.
once you get in there,
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
I agreed with you so
did I
much that
make you angry?
I hit my headset off.
I was like, did I make her
You're
mad?
exactly
What
right.
happened?
Best comment of
That's
the day
exactly
if you got her to knock the headset off.
Yes,
Yes.
that's exactly why I do these TV shows. It's because they get people in and they teach them things in that useful information in the process. I do
Mm.
a show called Weird Earth about crazy things caught on camera, and it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
But Cocaine Shark did a little bit better in the headlines than Weird Earth does,
It's a pretty epic
Yeah,
as
headline.
it
We hope
turns
it does.
out.
clicking on
As it
that all
turns,
day.
We
Yeah.
think we're going to get a few clicks on this one. So the other thing that's interesting about you, you don't appear to be a normal scientist. I don't know how to say this appropriately, but like
Well, that
Ginger,
wasn't a
you
good
asked
start.
this question.
I don't even know what you're trying to ask.
You know what I'm asking? Like we've had scientists on this show who are,
Okay. Let me
nerds,
woman
nerds.
explain this for Matt. He's like, you're beautiful, and you don't look like somebody who would be out there putting yourself in danger or doing this sort of research. What drew you to this, or like? Is it important that other people see you, and especially young girls, because they see you and they feel like, I'm smart. I like science. I like the ocean. I want to know more about marine biology and different things. How is seeing someone like you helpful to a lot of other people? Matt, was that okay?
That was absolutely, by the way, that was perfect. And I'm asking the question as a guy with daughters who are very sciencey. And I
And
just,
beautiful.
I started down the road and I was like, I don't know. I don't feel like this. So answer Ginger's question for us, Doc.
No, I knew exactly where you're going, and it is yeah, it's a very common question. I appreciate it because honestly, I got into environment and science because I loved invention and because I did come from Buffalo, which was the home of Love Canal. And even though that those incidents happened before I was born, the impacts lived on. And I realized that everything that we put into the environment eventually comes back to affect our health. And I realized how, I don't want to say clueless, but my parents had no idea any of this. And when I realized that these people that are supposed to be teaching me everything there was to learn didn't know any of this stuff that is crucial for our health and the longevity of our species, basically, it really like it kind of and then to know that underserved communities are more impacted by these environmental hazards, like that really it just, when you find your passion, it's like a fire is lighted
Mm-hmm.
inside you. But
Yeah.
I didn't start doing TV and doing things in front of a camera and even wearing makeup until my 11-year-old cousin. I remember this. It was like 2012, and she came over and she was obsessed with Kim Kardashian, just like obsessed with her. And I was like, and she was on Instagram. I wasn't on Instagram yet, and she was like, um, I was like, Juliana, there's got to be other people on, other role models on TV that look like you that are doing like, cool things and are really being badasses and getting out in the water and climbing mountains. And there wasn't.
Mm.
And so I called a girl that I went to a football game with, or that I met at a football game. She was all by herself. She was a freshman, and she happened to be a videographer. And I called her. I was like, "Hey, I want to do a video on my PhD research." And so we made the video, and Discovery found it. Someone from
Wow.
Discovery called me to create a show, and then MythBusters eventually picked me up.
Whoa.
Isn't that, you know what? That is impressive. And I'm so glad that you had the courage to do that, because most people, it's like you get what you get, right? And so you knew the importance of zhuzhing up the product and making it and putting it out. And you put yourself out there, and thank you, because we're all better for it and we're all learning so much because of it.
I would like to say, Ginger, that was a great question. Perfect. It was
that
a
you
perfect
tried to
question.
ask.
So no, that's great. And so that is, I mean,
And
you know,
Ginger, you're doing the same thing.
she is. We're all doing the same
Yeah.
thing.
Ma'am.
We
Yeah.
all just we're all trying to give out information in a way that we can present it and it's not distracting and people can be, oh, this person's interesting and maybe I'll listen to them. That is the goal of the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I since you're specializing in water, I am very curious what you think about the water situation in the United States. This might be venturing away a little bit, but the water we're drinking has come under fire. Flint, Michigan was blew a lot of people's minds that, wow, some of the water that's coming through my faucet could be killing my kids. Yeah. Do you feel like the situation in America is good, safe? Is there anything that worries you?
It's so crazy that we went in this direction. This is a huge, like, it's a very I have a lot of passion for this topic, especially when it comes to Flint, Michigan. I just got back from Jackson, Mississippi, who that city went through the same thing, and it's a ghost town now, and it's just it's devastating and so sad, especially when it comes to Flint, because I don't want to age myself, but back in 2002, okay, long before the media ever got a hold of headlines for Flint, Michigan, 2002, at the University of Florida. So this wasn't local. This was at the University of Florida. I had a capstone project, and the storyline was, the project was, there is a school in Flint, Michigan that is plagued by lead in their water. Develop a system, design a system to solve the problem. It was a water treatment class, water treatment design. And it was my first time science rapping. I did a rap to Wu-Tang about the school. But
Wait,
it
what?
was,
Wait, what?
yeah,
Just
Did you
a
say
casually
you
science rap.
rapped?
mentions. You mean
You're just going
Wu-Tang
to
Clan?
casually
You
throw.
just-
So before Flint, Michigan happened, you're saying there was a capstone, like, made up project in which it
It
wasn't
was
real.
a true situation,
Oh, it
though.
was a
We
true
knew.
situation.
Yeah, it wasn't just like a premonition. Scientists,
Wow.
like, this was a known problem
They
that
knew.
didn't get handled,
2002.
Wow.
and known even before that. Like, it wasn't touched. It just went on business as usual because of money or
Mm.
politics or whatever came into play until it made headlines. And that's why news is so important. Like, people get down on journalists, but when I think about situations like this, it's like it's just mind blowing that people don't actually react, or politicians, where funding goes doesn't actually, it's not changed for the better until the public gets behind it. And a lot of times the
And until you start
initiation of
mentioning
that is a headline.
lawsuits. You have to mention lawsuits for them to take it seriously, and it shouldn't come to that. I so appreciate that you have been dedicated to this topic, even though it's not what we started talking about, because you talked earlier about serving underserved communities and people who just don't have the knowledge or the information. And they had it back then and didn't care.
I mean, I'm sure if you look at the story of Love Canal or the people in West Virginia, or even watch Aaron Brockovich, these were all true stories. Promised Land, like, these are all true stories, and it has the same narrative every single time. The local
Mm.
community was being impacted. People knew it was being impacted. Some people didn't want to do anything because they wanted to protect the industry that was causing the problem, or it was too expensive to switch out the infrastructure and they needed to spend the money in another way. People left with hard choices and making the wrong decisions. um, I know that that's very, for me to say that when I wasn't involved in those decisions is not fair, but at the same time, from my
Mm.
perspective, that's just what it looks like.
Yeah, it
I
certainly
mean,
appears that
the
way.
information's
I,
there.
I
So
am still, you kind of blew my mind a little bit with that whole capstone project, that they knew about it, and then once it started to hit the big headlines, and like kids were dying. Like, what? Like, is that what? Or
Lead.
having learning
Pure
disabilities, like
poison
all
Oh, yeah.
sorts of issues, and
Oh,
they're
yeah.
just like, like, that's
And
basically
it's
the
not like
reaction.
Right, and the thing is, it's not like this was the first incident. I mean, the Love Canal thing, I know I keep on going back to it, but it started the EPA Superfund program. Children were being born with like two sets of teeth. There were so many birth defects, and it took years, and it took the public like being loud, and this woman like getting on the phone with every single politician she could possibly get a hold of, getting, like it took people taking the microphone when they didn't have it. And yeah, I mean, it's Flint, Michigan. I mean, Jackson followed it. There are places like this all over the United States. And we are so lucky that we can turn on our faucet and clean water comes out. Like that
Amen.
is pretty much a miracle. But we can't say that for everywhere in the US.
Yeah, it doesn't happen for everyone. Yeah,
Wow.
that is for sure.
What a good
I
education.
could talk to you all
Yeah,
day because
me too.
you threw out Wu-Tang and then the Kardashians, and it's like, what
Do you
is
remember the
happening?
Wu-Tang rap you did for Flint, Michigan?
Yeah,
Can
it
we?
was to a song called Gravel Pit. Okay, and this is why I picked it. Because back then, there was, I think Wu-Tang came to the University of Florida and they gave away singles, okay? They gave away single CDs. There's two tracks on there. There was the real song, and then there was the track with just the music. And that's the only song I had with just the music. And so, like, and I do have a single out. It's called Polar Ice Ice Baby. If you want to check it out, it stars my
Are you messing with
ex-interns,
us right now?
my
Are you
former.
messing with us?
I am not messing with you. The next one, and I still haven't come out with it. Bloom Bloom Pow, about algae blooms, Black Eyed Peas song.
Oh
What in the world?
my, Will.i.am
But
is coming for you. Um,
yeah.
You're going to be like the Weird Al Yankovic of science music? Is this what's happening?
I could have been, and I just haven't really prioritized it, because I'm not very good as a rapper, as it turns out. Like if I was good, I was asked to be on America's Got Talent, and I would have done it if I really felt like I was good.
So
I'm not.
you were asked.
I'm serious.
You
Yeah.
did not do it. So can you give us a little taste? Like I feel like we just need a little
Well,
taste.
they also wanted me to come up with an original song. You know what I mean?
Just for them.
I started.
yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't use a beat that was known. Like I couldn't do a cover. And that's like what
Yeah,
I've been.
That's what you
all
do.
I've done is covers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, where
Bloom
can we
Bloom
find
Pow. I
these?
love that.
Is this on
You just
YouTube?
yeah, it's on YouTube.
We need to Google Bloom Bloom Pow.
No, Polar Ice Ice Baby, Bloom Bloom Pow. It's kind of like in Zoolander, Blue Steel. Like it just hasn't come out yet. We're not ready for it.
Okay.
Not Blue Steel. Well,
The world's
Magnum,
not ready for
like
it.
Magnum. Right, the world's not ready for
Got
Bloom
it.
Bloom
Oh
Pow
my
like
God.
Magnum.
All right, Doc. I think we have kept you from your stuff for long enough. Thank you so much for educating us on
Fantastic.
music,
Thank you.
sharks,
And
cocaine,
So
water,
enjoyed it.
Yeah,
all of it.
The
cocaine sharks are
Kardashians.
real. We just
Awesome.
don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you.
You'll never get anything
Thank
like
you for
this
having me.
outside
Oh
of
my
Florida's Fourth
God.
Estate. Thank you for watching. Check in with you next week.
Oh my gosh.